Kakalosh Boker Tov, Masechet Betzah Daf 13A1. You were just speaking yesterday about two different shitot where we just said it wasn't a question to do with are you allowed to be molel melilot b'yom tov. Remember, molel melilot was to do like this of molel melilot. That's what Ronen was doing before, right? But he was referring to something else. Here we're talking about molel melilot. Okay, so we answered it was the shita of Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. There was a machloket between Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rebbe holds that a person is going to be chayav, right, by melilot with truma, and therefore the Mishnah is talking about you're not allowed to separate truma and yom tov, right? But that is according to the shita of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, that according to him you're not the person that does molel melilot is not going to be chayav truma. The Tanya we learned to the Beitzah. This is where we're starting by today. The Tanya we learned to the Beitzah. Imagine right now you brought in shibulin, the kernels, no? How do you call the shibulin? The long stalks. I don't know how you say it in English.
Ears of grain.
The ears of grain. So you brought in the ears of grain, right, into the house to make isa out of it. So technically speaking, you're allowed to eat, little by little, once in a while, arai, meaning you're not allowed to have a fixed meal from it, but you're allowed to eat a little bit, and you're going to be patur from truma. Why? Because as long as you did not do dash, which means you didn't separate the ears from the kernel from the grains, so it's going to be okay. But what happens now if you brought them in to do molel melilot? So Rebbe says you're going to be mechayev, which means you're going to be chayav truma immediately. And Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says you're going to be patur. So there's a machloket, are you going to be chayav or patur when you're going to be molel melilot? So says the Gemara, or Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, nami meshkachala, and also according to Shitat, right? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, right? He comes and he says, nami meshkachala, kigon shechni shibolin, la'asot mehen isa, v'nimlach alehen lemolan, right? B'yom tov. Here he says, according to Shitat of Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, we also found it in a place where you're bringing in shibbolin to make isa. Okay, v'nimlach alehen. Now you decided to change lemolam yom tov to do milan yom tov. That means you took them in to do an isa, which again we already saw the halacha. But then all of a sudden now we switched in midterm. In midway you switched. Now you want to do molel melilot, right? The tavla biyomeh. So now became tevel, right? Because now what happened was it became tevel. Because when you brought them into the house, you wanted to make dagan gamur, right? So then you have a chiyuv av tumot u'masrot. And since you were chayav, right, now you weren't able to actually do it. But he says now when you change your mind in Yom Tov, right, now what happens is immediately it has a chayav of a frasha. They have to separate it immediately. So says the Gemara, you're right. So elamai truma, what does it mean then? That you're not going to be zachai baramata, rov truma. Meaning the majority of the times, truma cannot be given off on Yom Tov. This one could be given on Yom Tov because you're chayav in Yom Tov. So because of that, when we said that you're not chayav, it's a majority. Okay? The majority of the times. Amar Abaye. Abaye comes and he says, machloket b'shibulin. Really, be'emet, the machloket is b'shibulin, which means you brought them in the house, right? Lemolam melilot. Right? Now this, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says you're going to be patur from truma because the majority is for disha. And therefore, even though you went to the minority, you're going to be exempt. Aval bekitniot, but when we're talking about kitniot, divra kol, according to everybody, is suryata tavla. Right? What does that mean? Everyone agrees. And here we're talking about that when you brought them into the house, right? When you brought them into the house, so what happens is that you did not make them. That's what he's saying here. It's going to be chayav in the truma immediately. Right, and it's going to be chayav. It's going to be asur afilu achilat arai. Okay, fine. So says the Gemara, right? Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, lema mesayeh lemisha yulo chavilet tiltan shel tevel. Imagine right now you have bundles of tiltan. How do you translate tiltan in English? Fenugreek. Fenugreek. Okay, so fenugreek, which is of tevel. Okay, areze kotesh. So yeah, one second. So Lema Mesayele, why don't we just say that this is a proof to that which we said, Misha Yulo Chavilet Tintan Shel Tevel. Imagine right now you have bundles of fenugreek of Tevel. Hareze Kotesh, you could start crushing them. Umechashev, and then you're going to calculate Kama Zera Yesh Bahem, how much seeds are inside. Umafrish ala Zera, then you're going to separate parallel to the Zera. Ve'eno Mafrish ala Etz, but you're not going to separate towards the etzim. The etzim, right, is kashet, right, it's hard. Okay, it's empty. There's nothing there. So therefore, even though the ta'am of this etz of the titan is domeh to the ta'am of the zera, he says the chachamim did not obligate in trumot u'masrot. Meaning they only obligated you to trumot u'masrot an actual zera itself, the seeds, but not an actual wood. My lover, we're not talking about Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudahi. Tamar Hatam, he says, La Tavla, right? That means that it's not going to be Yosef Mishum Tevel, right? Why? Because of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudahi, they're not obligated. But here by the Tiltan, or any other type of kitniot, when you bring it in, it is going to be Tevel immediately. So says the Gemara, no, it's Rebbe. This is Shitat Rebbe, right? That even according to Rebbe, Shibulim that you brought in to be Moleh Melilot immediately becomes prohibited because of Tevel. Okay? So says the Gemara, Rebbe, if you're going to tell me it's Rebbe, Ma'idya Tiltan, so why Tiltan? Even Shibulim is the same. Why are we only specifically speaking about fenugreek? The exact same halacha would apply to Shibulim, right? Which are the ears of the kernels, right? So says the Gemara, right? Lashminan shar mine kidniot. He's teaching us other types of kidniot, and kol sheken fenugreek. Elashil tiltan itzicha le, but the chidush is by the tiltan by the fenugreek. Sal kadam I would have thought to say hol v'tam etzol priyo shaveh lifrosh nami ha'etzol. I would have thought to say that even if it's not going to be that you're not going to eat the wood, but the fact that it has the same taste, I would have thought that you also have to separate the trumot masrot from it as well. Kamashvalan comes to teach you that you're not obligated to. Okay, fine. Ika damre. Now we're going to bring another version of Abaye. Right? Some people say Amar Abaye. Machloket, the machloket between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda, right? Between Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda was Davka and the Shibulim. But by Kitniot, Divre Akol, according to everybody, Isuriyata la Tavla. Everybody holds that the fact that you're going to come and you're going to tie them together and to bring them into your house, it's not going to become Mishum Tevel, because Stam Kitniot, when you bring them into the house, right? He says, is not chayav and truma. So, Meitvei, we're going to ask the following question according to this explanation. Right? My lava, we're not talking about tevel shel truma. So it's mashmad over here that here we're talking about the tevel. And which type of tevel? Truma gdola. Remember that there's a kohen, right? The kohen receives truma gdola. Yeah, right. When they're paying attention, they receive truma gdola. Yeah. So what happens is that they receive truma gdola. Then afterwards, we give to the Levim. Huh?
Even there is a phone. They're on the phone.
No, there, right? The phone is just there for us, right? But everything else is
5 shekels. 5 shekels.
We're not talking about tevel of truma. We're talking about tevel of trumat maaseh. Remember, the Kohen receives two different rewards, if you want to call them. Number one is truma gdola, which is the first thing that you take off 1/50th, and then afterwards you give to the Levi. The Levi you give 10%, which is called maaser rishon. Then afterwards you're going to come and you're going to take off trumat maaser, which is maaser min maaser, which is basically the Levi takes off 1/10 of what he received and he gives that to the Kohen. That's what we're talking about. That is going to the Kohen, not which we said before. Just like Rabbi Yehu named Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Tamar Rabbi Yehu Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Maaser Rishon shekdimo b'shibolin, Shemo tovlo litrumat maaser. When you have a case of Maaser Rishon, that you went and you took off Truma Gdola in the Shibolin, Shemo tovlo, etzem, the fact that it's Maaser makes it Tevel because of the Trumat Maaser that was not taken off. Meaning, why is it considered Tevel? Remember, Tevel means untithed produce. You do not take off Trumot Masro, but all the Trumot Masro. So here too, the fact that you didn't take off Trumat Maaser, it still makes it Tevel. Kotesh lamali. So says the Gemara, why do we need to learn the halacha of kotesh, that you're being kotesh at Tiltan, and then you're giving it to the Kohen, it's Trumat Maaser? Why don't you just say, just like they gave it to me, I'm going to give it to you. Meaning, how did they give me the Maaser? I'm going to give you the Trumat Maaser. Why is it that the Levi, the Levi, has to prepare it better? Imagine right now the Levi gets a certain product. Now he has to even finish it off in order to give it to the Kohen. The way I got it, I'm going to give it to you. I'm the Levi. I'm going to give it to you, the Kohen, the way that I got it, the exact same way. Why all of a sudden now I have to prepare it more? I have to be kotesh. Why? So says the Gemara, Amar Rava says, it's a knas. The knas is that they were kones the Levi. They gave a knas to the Levi because he caused the Israel, Bala Tiltan, to be ma'adim in Divrei Torah and to take off ma'aser before Truma Gdola. Meaning, what's the first thing that you're supposed to take off? Truma Gdola. Right? The Truma Gdola is the first thing that you take off. This guy, he went the opposite. He gave the Maaser before the Truma Gdola. So the fact that the Levi came and he took the Maaser before the Truma Gdola, which now causes Ki'ilu Arama, that now Ki'ilu is not going to get the Truma Gdola. So now we give a knas to the Levi. we give a punishment to Levi. What's the fine, the penalty, the knas? Now he has to give it ready-made to the Kohen. He has to do the ktisha, because even though he received it in an unfinished form, he has to now finish it off his ktisha in order to give it to the Kohen. We also learned this in Beitzah ben Levi shenatnu lo shibolim b'masrotav oseh otan goren. He has to come and he has to make it 100% goren. Anavim oseh to yain, zetim oseh to shemen. Mafrish shalem truma maaser v'noten lekohen. Right? Why? Shekeshem shetruma gdola ena nitelet. You'd give them a bet. Yeah, just like truma gdola is not nitelet el mi goren mina yekev, so to truma maaser nitelet min goren mina yekev. Okay, you give them a bet. 13b. Okay, goren is granary.
Is what?
Granary. Goren is a granary. How do you call a granary?
Same source. Well, and grain.
Granary. Grain. It's where they keep the. How do you call it? The where they keep the grain. It's called the granary. The silos. Silos. No? Okay. Fine. Okay. Next, you give a mubet mechashev. We're talking about you have to evaluate how many seeds are inside. So how many dabai? Says 1 second. Truma maaser needs medida, not just enough evaluation. What does that mean? You have to come, you have to measure it, right? People, they don't just come and say, how much do you weigh? So I'm going to say, you weigh this and that. You measure, right? Somebody that's on a good diet, right? He comes and he measures it. He has a scale. Yeah, he's going to come, yeah? So what does that mean? Right? He's not just going to come, pachot yoter. We know the pachot yoter. We know the more or less guys, you understand? They never succeed. Because it's more or less. Yeah? Huh? So he comes and he says, Hamani, who is this? He says, Abba Elazar ben Gimel he. It's Abba Elazar ben Gimel. The Tanya was learned to write Abba Elazar ben Gimel Omer, Ben Achshav Lachem, Terumatchem, Kadagam Minagam Lechem Min Yaakov. What does it mean? The Torah is talking about two different types of trumot. One is Truma Gdola, one is Truma Maaser. Keshem shetruma gdola nitele beomer. Just like Truma Gdola, you don't have to actually measure it. It's more or less. It's an evaluation, 150. So too, b'machshava, and in your mind, right, which means, right, that all you have to do is even, it says over here, right, b'achlatat lev, without even actually separating it. It's already enough. So too, Trumat Maaser nitele beomer v'machshava. So too, it's going to be given with omen. Trumat Maaser, exactly. So Trumat Maaser and Truma Gdola is the same halacha. Okay? Gufa, right? We actually explained as follows. It says, Amar Rabbi Yavu, Amar Rabbi Shimon Melakish. Says Rabbi Yavu in the name of Shimon Melakish, Ma'aser Rishon Shikdimo B'Shibulim. When you have Ma'aser Rishon, which you are magdim to the Truma Gdola in the Shibulim, Shemot Tovlo Litrumat Ma'aser. What does that mean? Right? The Etzem Yoto Ma'aser makes it tevel, right? It's making it tevel to do the Trumat Ma'aser, which was not taken off from it. My time, what's reasoning? Rava says, because it has the name of Maaser. Meaning the fact that it has the name Maaser, and the Torah says, mimenu, from the Maaser, Trumat Hashem, Maaser. So it's mashma from the fact that it's also called Maaser, even though it didn't finish, right? The Levi'im were obligated to give it over. They were obligated to give it over to the other one. So that's why we're saying the Maaser becomes Tevel, even if you did not finish the product. Okay? Amar Rabbi Shimon Melakish, says Rabbi Shimon Melakish, Maaser Rishon Shekdimo B'Shibolin, Patu Mitruma Gdola. And this is the previous halacha we just from before. Meaning, if somebody is going to take off Maaser Rishon when it's still in the Shibolin, before you actually finish the product, now you're not obligated in Truma Gdola. Meaning, you bypass the Kohen. You heard? You could bypass the Kohen. You come, you take off Maaser Rishon, you give it first. When it's still in the Shibolin first, you bypass the Kohen. That's what you're allowed to do. Yeah? He doesn't like the idea. Yeah, because now you don't have to give Truma Gdola. Truma Gdola is the first thing that you give. But if you went and you gave off Maaser Rishon before the Truma Gdola, when it was still in the Shibolin status, Patur mi Truma Gdola. Shnema v'aretem mimenu Trumat Hashem min Maaser min Maaser, Maaser min Maaser amarti lecha, velo Truma Gdola Truma Maaser min Maaser. So you could actually bypass the Kohen. Okay? So Amale Rav Papa Labaye, says Rav Papa to Abaye, so afilu igdimo bekrinam. So 1 second. So then, even if you're going to come, so if you're already going to say the pasuk is going to say that you're going to be patud, so even if it was igdimo bekri also, why did we say that it still had to be in the status of the kernels of the ears of the grain? Even when it's in a pile, it should still be the same thing. If you came in, you take off Maaser Rishon before taking off Truma Gdola, you should be patur. So answers the Gemara, Alecha Markra, on you, the Pasuk says, because of your question, Mikol Matenotechem Tarim Mikol Hashem. The word kol comes to teach you that the Levim have to take off the Truma, so they have Tfisab Maaser Mitzad Ma, Trumat Maaser in any case. So we're going to add on to it Truma Gdola in the case when it's going to be taking part of the Kri, and then he's going to be Gorem, La'avir L'Maaser Mitzad Chelkol Shel HaKohen. So says the Gemara, why are you adding in the word kol to tell you that once it's in a Kri status, now that's it? Umar Ra'ita, right? Why did you see from the word kol Trumat Hashem to include an extra Truma, which is Trumat Maaser? And we're talking about the Maaser, which is Ikdimo B'Kri. Maybe Bemet, it's not like that. So says the Gemara, Hay Idgan ve'hay lo Idgan. Right? The Maaser Shikdimo B'Kri is already called Dagan. In the second that you put in a pile, it's already Dagan. It's grain. Right? And therefore, once it's grain, you're going to be chayav. You're chayav of the truma and everything, right? But it says reshit dagan echad titen lo, v'haylo idgan. But in the case of the shibulim, it's not dagan yet. It's not grain. It's kernels. It's ear kernels. How do you call them? So it's not grain. So since it's not grain, there's no chayav. There's no chiyuv yet on truma. Okay. Tanan hatam. We learned over there in the Mishnah. Kalef seorin, mekalef achat achad ve'ochel. You're going to come. You're going to start peeling, right? The gargires seorim, barley, to eat them. When it's meaning you're going to eat it raw, right? But they're klufim, but you're eating it without the shell. So you're allowed to do it one by one, and you're allowed to eat. Okay, you're going to be patur for the maaser because, right, this is called an achilat arai. It's not normal to eat it like this. But if you started peeling a whole bunch of them and you put it in your hand, now you're going to be chayav. Because once you put a whole bunch in your hand, that's normal eating. And if you eat one by one, that's not considered eating. But if you eat a bunch, you have a bunch in your hand, that's considered eating. The exact same halacha would apply to Shabbat, which means that if you're going to do one by one, there's no isur because of a mifarek, which is a toladav dash, meaning there's an isur of dash, which is threshing. Mifarek is taking something out of its peel. So if you're going to do one by one, there's no isur on Shabbat to do that on Shabbat. But if you're going to do a whole bunch, that's going to be a isur on Shabbat, right? The previous we were talking about Yom Tov. Remember, Beitzah is normally on Yom Tov. Beitzah is Yom Tov. Now we're applying it to Shabbat.
What about during Chol?
No, during Chol you can do whatever you want.
You can peel many of them. And
you can do whatever you want. The only difference is you're going to be chayav maaser or not. If you did a whole bunch, so then it's going to be considered a achila kivua, so you're going to chayav maaser. If it's going to be one by one, it's an achila tarai, and you're patur for maaser. Right? That's during the week. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to do it one by one. And also on Shabbat, you're allowed to do one by one. If you do a whole bunch on Shabbat, you're chayav shum mefarek tolda dash. Right? By the way, you should know they speak about that, about all these kidneyot and everything. Even bananas, peanuts, they speak about it on Shabbat. Why is there no isur of tolda dash of mefarek tolda dash? Are you allowed to open up peanuts? Because you're taking something out of a peel. You're taking out of something from its protection. So it's like dash. That's like threshing. So they speak about that. Anything which is done for the house and not done for the field is not a problem of mefarek tolda dash. So there's a whole question about the peanuts. That's, you usually when you do it right before the meal. Right before, you don't do it for the warehouse. You understand? But for example, all the other things that you do for dash, usually you do it for the warehouse. You do it for the granaries and things like that. You understand? So that's a huge enough kamias in halakha l'maseh. That's why they say even bananas. Say the banana also. The banana, you're right, they just use it for transport. But if not, bemet, if they would actually have, it would have been a sur to actually take off the banana peel and to take it off from the cluster. Right, mamash, it's like a whole.
Only the banana and not the orange and not.
There's nothing in the orange. Orange, you're not allowed to take it off the tree on Shabbat. There's not. It's not attached there. No, taking it out from a type of a bundle. You have like a bundle and you're taking it out. Okay. So says the Gemara, any is it so that Rav mekalfelet vitu kase kase. He says 1 second. The wife of Rav used to come and start peeling a whole bunch of seurim on Shabbat, and she used to fill up cups and cups. So what are you telling me that it's a sur on Shabbat? Rav Chia mekalfelet vitu kase. Same thing with Rav Chia. Says the Gemara, no, you're right. Leit mariyat seifa on the seifa. Hamolel melilot shel chitim. If you're going to be molel melilot, remember you're doing this, yeah, which is molel melilot, yeah. So minapeach al yad yad. So you could throw it from one hand to another hand, ve'ochel, and then you could eat it, and you're still going to be patur from maaser. But if you came and you blew it and you put it inside of your clothing, you're going to be chayav, because that's considered a achilat keva. The same halacha would apply to the Shabbat, that you're allowed to be manapeach miyad el yad, but not in your clothing. Because you do it in your clothing, it could be a problem of chitat of chilul Shabbat, but miyad diyad is going to be permitted. Okay? So basically, again, we're going back to Ilchot Shabbat. Are you allowed to do this on Shabbat or not? So matkif la Rabbi Abba bar Mamal, the reisha lemaaser in the Shabbat law. Are you telling me that the reisha, which is talking about peeling together, is only talking about maaser but not Shabbat? Does there exist anything which to do with Ilchot Shabbat it's considered melacha, but to do with maaser it's not considered? To do with Shabbat it's not considered melacha, and to do with maaser it is considered melacha. Which means, according to the Mishnah, if you're going to do a whole bunch of them together, it's a gemar melacha to do with maaser but not with Shabbat. Does there exist such a thing? So matkif la Rav Shisha ber Ravidi, we're going to ask a question against this, right? So the Gemara is going to actually ask to answer up. Velo, what? You just told me that there cannot be something which is a gemar melacha to do with maaser but not with Shabbat. There it does exist. There's a case of a few fruits which it's going to be considered maaser, but it's not melacha on Shabbat. The Tanam was learned to the Mishnah. Ezu garnan l'maaser hakishuin, cucumbers, luin, pumpkins. Ishifakesu. Once you're going to take off the pikas shalayim, it says your pikas is like a flower on the top, right? So usually it falls off. V'shelo piksan piksu mishiamod arema, or right, even if it didn't take it off, but you went and you put them in a pile. Utnan nami, we also learned to do with betzalim, onions. Mishiamid arema, once you made an arema, a pile. V'ilu legabe Shabbat, all these things, it's considered a gemar melacha to do with maaser. But to do with Shabbat, v'ilu legabe Shabbat, hamadat arema patur. You're going to be patur if you put it in a pile, right? You're going to be patur because it's not asur. What are you going to tell me? That the Torah prohibited something which is in your mind. So to hear, which means it's not melechet uman. It's not you don't need an expert to come and start peeling it. That's why it's not going to be chayav on Shabbat. So says the Gemara, Keitza molel. Fine. Okay, so now we just pushed off that there does exist such a thing as a difference between gemar melacha by maaser and not by Shabbat. Now we're going back to do the molel mililot and yom tov. Keitza molel. How are you going to do molel mililot and yom tov? Yeah, Abaya Mishmed Rav Yosef Amad, chada chada, one finger and another finger. So you have to do one finger and another finger. Rav Mishmed Rav Yosef Amad, even one and two. So you have one on two fingers, not one on one, one on two. Okay, one on one, one on two. So Rav Amar, Kevin the Mishaneh, once you changed, afilu chada kuli. Once you change something, even if you're going to do one on everything, on all of them. Yeah, this is one on one. This is one on two. Yeah, he likes all these things because it looks like money. You're doing like this, either one on one, one on two, now one on everything. Yeah, on all of them. So he says, Keitza minapeach, how do you blow? He says, minapeach, right? Yudalad amud aleph. Minapeach, nikeshet beotav, ulmala. What does that mean? Right? You're going to come and you're going to be minapeach. Right? He says over here, akeshet beotav lemala. Right, but not in his palm. It has to be only the kishet built up, which is on the top part, okay, where the knuckles are. But in any still they were laughing at him. He says, once you changed, you could do whatever you want. You could do it in your entire hand. And Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar, you're right. You use one entire hand and with all your strength, but you can't do it with two hands. Okay, you could do it with one hand, and you can do it with all your strength. Yeah. With the entire thing. We continue tomorrow. Yudalad amud aleph.